No, we're just going to wing it.
It was a
Because that thing's a nightmare.
In my head.
It was a legal terminology joke, and then I immediately realized it was dumb.
So we had a lot of technical difficulties while we were shooting the learning and what we would change about schools. So you can watch that whole video, but we're going to give one-sentence summaries of what we said and then say heck with it and leave it as it is.
Elementary and middle schools need to focus less on solid grades and focus more on learning and like pre-tests and whatnot.
Yeah.
We should teach scientific literacy so that people are able to evaluate scientific claims and learn more.
We should incorporate the best aspects of homeschooling, which is being able to pursue things that you're really interested in.
Off that, I would say that individual focus and working with students at their own pace.
Off that, I would say that socioeconomic status of students is very important in terms of like what they're learning and how they're learning at home, and I think schools should be more aware of that.
Mm-hmm. We need a national definition of what schools are for, so that way we all are on the same page about how many skills we're teaching and how many problems schools are addressing. So that way we can all move forward in the best way on the issues that we're trying to address.
Who could argue with any of those points? So if you would like to watch the full massive technical difficulty version, that follows immediately after. But, please like and subscribe. And have a great day. Thank you. Okay. Hey, everybody.
Hey!
Hey, guys. Outstanding. Okay, we all got here
On time?
on time and ready to talk. Very good. My name is Dr. Mark Hatala, and welcome to my home. Today we're going to talk about school, because we've all been in school before, and learning, and the ways that we would change schools if we were able to do so. But why don't we get started with introductions?
I'm Will.
I'm Zach.
I'm Maddy.
I'm Annie.
And I'm Ashley.
Outstanding. So I'm sure we all have complaints about the schools that we're in and how we would change them. But who would like to get started?
I guess I'll start.
Thank you, Will.
So, I guess my view of school has changed a lot through my education class. I want to be a special ed teacher, and just kind of seeing, different things they talk about with that. And honestly, it's changed my view just with school in general. I think one thing, especially middle schools and elementary schools are really, really bad about is they focus hard on grades and not as much about actually the learning. Because, I remember even in middle school, that was when my parents really started, they started checking grades in elementary school. But, that's when, you would hear kids talking about, oh, this is my grade in this class, And not that grades aren't important, but I feel like that stress should not be put on kids that young. And, absolutely, study habits and whatnot should be encouraged. But, I feel like it should be more about improvement at a young age than it is actually about, you're, doing this, and this. This fact that you may never need ever again.
Algebra.
Yeah,
I use algebra.
Yeah, algebra is the only useful thing I have from middle school.
Okay.
Algebra is the
Wood
one that
shop.
I'll stand by.
I've never used wood shop.
Well, it depends on what in algebra,
No, these are, I didn't mean to.
No, you're fine. It's just, I think, I think pre-tests should be a bigger thing maybe than they are. And that way, you do a post-test, and that way you can still test kids and still do grades based on that, but you can maybe add a few points, they have made a huge improvement since, maybe this pre-test, and not necessarily just pre-test at the very beginning when obviously they don't know anything, but maybe even in the middle, what are you picking up so far? A gradual kind of improvement thing. And if there's one thing about high school that really needs to change, it's preparing kids for life, other than just first of all, I don't think they prepare all that well for college as it is, but skills, you know what I mean?
Taxes?
Taxes and checkbooks and stuff like that. And they briefly touched on that in one of my business classes. but like they don't do a whole lot of stuff like that. You know what I mean? Like just I know people that don't know how to mow a lawn. And maybe that is something that a parent should, but even just you know what I mean? Like things you would think, cooking is
skills of basic living.
People don't know how to write checks anymore.
People don't know how to write checks.
But how often do you have to do that? We're shooting in 2019.
Paying rent.
Yeah. I was gonna say paying rent. I have
some
to write
utilities.
checks.
Well, we'll go over to Maddy then. Maddy, what would you change about school?
Okay.
Besides the check writing.
The check, I should have gotten taught how to write a check. Still upset about that. No, I got it figured out. But, so, I was actually homeschooled until 6th grade. So something that for me seemed to really help me out and helped me learn everything is that we kind of got that individual attention from my mother. And my mom was an elementary educator before she decided to homeschool my brother and I, so she was pretty knowledgeable on how to teach us and everything. It wasn't just like, I'm just gonna have you at home and we're gonna just cook and stuff.
And mow the lawn.
I know how to mow the lawn. That's one thing I learned from homeschool. But from that, I think it allows children to excel at whatever rate they are able to. So I went into public school in 6th grade and I had a 12th grade reading level. So just different things like that. I was right on the same level with people in math, but other areas I was way above it. And so I think that individual attention and working with a student individually allows for them to excel at whatever rate is good for them, is, productive for them. And I think that's something that in schools they don't necessarily do, and so some kids are either held back whenever they could be way ahead because they have to stay with their grade, or some kids are being pushed way harder than they're ready for. And so I don't know, I think that could be helpful for kids so that they could go at their own pace. And
I want to follow up on what you said, because it was one of my ideas of changing school too. I wasn't homeschooled, but when I was in 6th grade, they separated 3 of us out and basically said, do whatever you want, because, I think there should be more free time for just pursuing whatever you're interested in school. So in an 8-period day, there should be 1 period where you can't just sit at the lunch table and talk with people, but you should pursue your own interests, because I think that would pay huge dividends outside of the school too, where people would spend that time on what they're interested in.
And especially whenever I was homeschooled, we got through the core things, and that between my brother and I, since there's only 2 of us, would take maybe all together throughout the day 4 hours, maybe. And so then we were free to help around the house, go outside, mow the lawn, try out some more sports, go with our imagination, go run wild. And,
pursue your own interests.
Exactly, and I think that was really beneficial for us.
No, I agree. That's the huge advantage of homeschooling. I think that should be incorporated into schools.
Kind of on that point of differentiation and being able to give that one-on-one attention to students, I think a lot of that stems from an inconsistent view of what the point of education is in even in just different schools in the same city. But for me, one thing that I'm not sure if this is something that necessarily should be done, but this would have been beneficial for me if it were to change, is more of a national standard, more of inclusion of what people are doing at different ages, because so for me, I never had a world history class because I changed schools, and the standards for one school were different than the standards for another school. So when I switched, these kids were going to take it in there at the end of the school year. A different sequence. At the end of the school year. And these kids were going to take it at the beginning of the school year. So when I switched, it was right on that line. And so they were well, we can't change the system now. Guess you're just going to do this other class again. And the other thing is I had wildly different levels and expectations. I went from one school where I was learning cursive and if I didn't write my assignments in cursive, which I'd never learned before, then everything was a 0. So I quickly learned cursive, to another school that was never taught cursive and instead was taught really fast typing skills.
Sure.
Which you have...
Sorry guys, I have to cut you off. This says change the battery pack. I don't understand.
Okay. We lost our video feed But Ashley was telling us about what she would say.
Yeah, so just basically, I think that it would be important to accommodate students who are transitioning from different schools. Right now, every school system and every state has radically different rules, radically different ways that they go over the curriculum. And for the students who are transitioning between those, or who like come from like a different school system, it can be really detrimental to their education because there are gaps in their education that are falling through the cracks. And I think that is really frustrating.
Can I ask you a question though? And because both you and Will are going to be educators, I thought Common Core was supposed to deal with that issue.
So, yes, but one of the issues with Common Core is that it raised the standards in a way that not everybody is able to adequately adjust to. And also with like the whole thing of teacher accountability being based off of tests, like I feel like it's definitely great to have a bar, like a bottom bar of how much you need to know, and that still allows people to go above that. But if you have a system where students are coming in with like grades worth of misinformation or lacking knowledge, and then expecting them to in 1 year go this far when they have a whole bunch of other things that they're dealing with, that's a good goal, but not a great standard to hold teachers to, because sometimes like you have to work with what you have to work with the growth and the improvement. And Common Core and like No Child Left Behind ironically leaves a lot of children behind, and like that's not the intention, and I think that it's a good idea, but I think that there are better ways to implement it, and part of that is by understanding that everybody comes from a different situation and you need to accommodate people where they're at, not where they should be.
Yeah, Common Core is definitely a better at this point in time in ideology than it is in practice.
Like I like the idea of having national standards. I think that's good and something that we should strive for, but I think that we still have to work on how to put that into practice, because even though that is something like national standards and being able to accommodate kids like me who transition, like that is also not a great thing for the individual communities, because then you're not able to differentiate as well if you're trying to keep up with everybody else in the entire country, you know? So, like, I have a lot of dissonance about that. I think there's a lot of things that need to change about the education system, and one of the best ways to do that is to pick a direction. Like, if we can figure out as a nation what we want schools to do, that will make things a lot easier to actually do them. Because I feel like one of the biggest issues with school is that schooling started not as a way to prepare for your future career, but as a way to give us all a social, like, connection, you know, to equalize us and, like, kind of assimilate us a little bit. Like, that was the point. It wasn't to, like, better you as an individual. It was to better the community by giving us some common ground. And anytime, like, you have, like, a major societal issue, it's often put on schools of, like, we're gonna fix racism, we're gonna fix classism, we're also gonna teach you all the things you need to know so we can keep up technologically with China. And it's like, that's a lot to put on the students. And, like, one of the big things that you see with, like, adaptive skills of, like, writing checkbooks and, like, being job ready is it's like, so where's the line between family expectations and school expectations, you know, of like, and if we can define where that line is, of schools will provide this and there will be things that will be left out, but we'll have to find a way as a society to deal with that, or school is going to provide everything. School is going to feed all the children, so that way we don't have as much children who aren't eating because their families can't feed them, you know, or like fix all the social inequality that exists in the world, you know? Like, if that's our goal, we need to collectively as a nation agree to that, you know?
Annie and Zach, what do you think?